Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, make it for you. They should see you. Who's
No.
on the machine? Wait.
How many pieces?
I only two. So I'm going to put one there and one by you. It's time to no. Oh, yeah. That's it. Okay. You want to put it all the way to the back over there, so it's gonna. Moti, Rabbi Lipsky, we were thinking, are you gonna not? The flyer means nothing. Nein, mir gedacht, wir waren Schirm Shulchan Aruch. And somehow farbrengen. He's coming, but he's being delayed. So you want to? What? Okay. The emes is that we discussed to have the Shulchan Aruch share, and then Rabbi Golomb is going to come and Mamshech Zayin Chatchila Riber and Hernein. So the Chatchila Riber, instead of going in Hilchos Shabbos, I was thinking to and so Rabbi Katzman, it's the outside today. It's going to be on video, everything, right? So he wanted to make the farbrengen should be upstairs. We should do lechatchila riber. Lechatchila riber means to say sein teure, so sein alles sein zu der Sache. Anyway, so I very, very much wanted to touch on the idea of learning halachas from the Alter Rebbe. Davke Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe. And we see, it's time I met today. Unfortunately, I was by Levaya, so they were looking for minhagim. So they hesped, it's Nisan, it's still, whichever, and a Kaddish. So one of the guy, Choshev Yid over there, tells me we are popper. We go everything the Rav. I mean, there's no Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Yeridei in Hilchos Aveilos. So, but he's trying to tell me whatever we do over here, because I told him Lubavitch we don't do it. He's like, we're the same. Everything is the Rav. Shulchan Aruch Rav is not stam. There is not stam. The Maggid gebeten der Alter Rebbe soll machen. Every word is unbelievable. And if we learn epis in Shulchan Aruch, we can learn so much. Halachas, so tracht, when Sfiras Oimer now, instead of going and Hilchos Shabbos, so Bichlal Midir and the Oilam, that the shir over here, the Monday night shir, is not stam. You take the Shulchan Aruch, you have a Sif Aleph and gelernt and Eins, and that's it. Boom, it's a reading. Since the Alter Rebbe's every word is so calculated, as we're going to take now, we're going to take Sfiras Oimer, and we'll see how calculated is every a vote and even a line, utzibur, without tzibur, and he changes sometimes from, if you go in the Mokoiris and you see, it makes azad grace a chiluk. So the Hilchos Shabbos that we learn over here together, we go from the Mokoiris, from the Gemara, from the Rishonim, I'm saying from Rashi Tosfos and weiter, and until to the Aruch HaShulchan, to Mishnah Berurah, and this is already later. Aber bis sie kommt zu der Alter Rebbe is to mazbe sein, ausnehmen jeder Sach. If we go to the Mekoiros, we see the difference of what does Alter Rebbe come out, and there is all kind of halachas difference. Lamoshel, a young man calls me up. He's making a bas mitzvah. I don't want it to be on the table, whatever. And when we have bas mitzvah, can I make kapella, this, that, whatever. If we learn Alter Rebbe, this we have from the Alter Rebbe. We have clear, Tov Tzadi Gimel. So I made a copy from Sfiras Oimer a little bit, and verstehen the Mekoiros from Sfiras Oimer, mit der Reise, mit der Rabbonon, the counting, the forgetting, the Sofek, the Svek, the Minogim of Aveilos, and this is allowed, this is not allowed, Shechionu, Lubavitch, everything. So everything is, there's a precedent, comes from before, and we get up. So if Birshuschem, We'll go to Shulchan Aruch Tov Pei Tes. This is Dinei Sfiras Oimer. Dinei Sfiras Oimer. The Alter Rebbe starts off with one vote. Right in the beginning, he starts off Tfilas Leil Sheni Shel Pesach Usfiras Oimer. If you think about it, you look in this whole sif, you don't see Tfilas Seder Tfilas Leil Sheni. What Seder do you have really by davening? But that's the header of the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber. So he whatever he can leave, the Rebbe doesn't change. You know, we always learn that whenever he quotes a Maimar Chazal from the Gemara, or even he brings the Moker from Shulchan Aruch, the Remo, he'll stick to whatever he can to the Nusach. The Nusach, but if he needs to change a word, he will change a word. Here, it's after all, it is Negeh. Sfiras Oimer is after davening, right? So we do it. Why after davening? Why after davening? So he has a sif about it. Todir, Sheine, Todir. You know, so you have everything. So everything has a cheshbon. Then he starts off with the word Mitzvahs Esem min haTorah sheyisper kol echad miYisrael. What does it mean, kol echad miYisrael? So yes, the Mechaber brings down also the same lotion, kol echad, aber that it should be kol odom, kol ish miYisrael. What kol echad, not kol achas. Okay, so he wants to say kol echad, but he wants to say something else over here. What he wants to say is in the Hemshech HaSif, you're going to see very, very clear what he wants to say. All this is Negeh, Pashat Negeh Lepoel, then we're going to learn out a lot of dinim. Interessant, I don't know. I mean, I know we came from farbrengen. We'll have anyway. He brings down yet because Shiva Shavuos Yomim Miyoim Avos Korban Oimer. Shiva Shavuos Yomim. What kind of language is this? Shiva Shavuos Yomim. He changed, by the way. He writes Shiva Shavuos Yomim. It's going to bring later a machloikis. By the way, he says Mitzvahs Esem min haTorah. He's going to say later that there's a machloikis. We all know the machloikis are Rishonim. If in our days is a mitzvah esem min haTorah or midrabanon, and he's going to say as midrabanon. So what does he write to me a mitzvah esem min haTorah? Oh, but he's sicher that the Sfiras Oimer is a mitzvah esem. If it's shaykh today or not, if today is zecher or not, that's already a andere Sach. But in Indian is avadador mitzvah esem min haTorah. That's why he starts off very parve. Mitzvahs Esem min haTorah. There is a mitzvah in haTorah to count. Now he continues. Shiva Shavuos Yomim. He wants to tell you two things. You got to count days and weeks. Really, there's a machloikis in that because there's three opinions. One, the Rishonim, some say that min haTorah you have to count. You have to count. One say you don't have to count midraisa, only midrabanan. Some make in between. There's four shittas. But another shit is Shiva Shavuot, week you should count, but not days, or days you should count, not weeks. You know, Shiva Shavuot, you should count weeks. So he writes to me, Shavuos Yomim, weeks and days. But then he says, Miyoim Avos, from when do you count? From when do you think you should bring? From Havos Ha'oimer. Everyone says, Miyoim Avos Ha'oimer. The Alter Rebbe writes, Miyoim Avos Korban Ha'oimer. Oimer is a korban, right? Oimer is a korban because Minchas, it's the Minchas Oimer comes with the korban. And with the korban, you bring the Oimer, right? So he calls it a korban. It's going to be also Negeah. If it's a korban, so you count when there's a korban. Some say, those who say it's a min haTorah, counting today. Why is it a korban min haTorah? There's no Oimer. Because you count for the Matan Torah. So look, Matan Torah is coming up. What do I came? Beis Hamikdash, not Beis Hamikdash. Matan Torah is coming up, so I have to count. Min haTorah. But if I say I count mitzvah korban ha'oimer, and today I don't have a korban ha'oimer, so that's why he writes it. Meanwhile, he tells you korban ha'oimer, but also this Zach in a wenig. Then he says, "Shenemar svartem lechem b'mochas Shabbos mimavach misivat nuvo sheva Shabbos tim mistieno v'oimer shiva Shabbos tispor loch." What does it mean tispor loch? So the Gemara brings down v'dor sherachomim tispor loch. you should count. So I would think it should be the Bezdin, because by Yovel it says also Shiva Shavu is Tispoloch in the end of Bahar, yeah. K'may b'Yovel shetem Bezdin. So it's Sheva Shabbos Shonim u'Mekatsh Shnas Chamish Lo Yev Tamud Leim U'Sfartim Lochem. You have two psukim. One pasuk it says Fartim Lochem. One pasuk it says Lecho. So you should count, but you should count this. Then he continues one word and he says unbelievable. Kidei lesoifo lekol echad ve'echad. Doesn't say like everyone said, Kidei shetispoil kol echad. Kidei lesoifo lekol echad ve'echad. Then it should be counted by each one. In other words, there's going to be later, we're going to learn, there's going to be a machloikis. If everyone has to count, or if you can hear from someone. So he leaves you here. Kidei lesoifo. It should be counted. Lekol echad ve'echad. Then he tells you Nochadin, ve'ein hatzibur shliach tzibur yichol misper be'ad kulam. A tzibur and a shliach tzibur cannot count for everyone. What does it mean? It's tzibur. What do you mean it's tzibur? Tzibur means like Kriyas HaTorah. The tzibur, if there's a tzibur, it's being done, and that's it. No tzibur, no done. The tzibur counts genug. You know the kehillah. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, shliach tzibur, like Megillah, like everything. You have a shliach tzibur that counts. That does it. Says no, you can't. Everyone has to count. Which important it is that sometimes you think, oh, I forgot to make a bracha, so I don't have to count. Even if it's min Torah, then you have to count. It's not the bracha. The bracha is nicht. Ma? Oh, that's why he said kol echod. I missed it. Kol echod means kol. I'm not going to say kol echod v'achas. Kol echod because a woman is not chayiv, because the mitzvah says a woman is not chayiv, right? Okay. Now he tells us this: Afim echod mitzav lechaver sheyisper b'shviloi, vos shliach lekach ein yitzedei chavosei. If you made a shliach to go count for you, it's no good. Why not? I ask someone to be mekadosh isha. Right. He gives mekadosh isha and it's done. Done. Kemegarish isha, right? Whatever you are, shliach shel odom kemoisoi. He was schlecht. Truma. I send him to make truma. I send him to make a mezuzah. Whatever it is. No. Here I have to count myself. Why do I have to count myself?
What?
Huh?
No.
Because he. He's going to explain you why. If he didn't hear, he cannot make someone else a shliach. However, but if he heard from someone else, in other words, you heard the other one counting, not the guy is my shliach, and he's going over there, and you're going to shul now? Go to shul and count for me. No, I cannot. But if I hear you and I tell you, count and be moitzi me, if he had in mind to be yoitze, then yotze dechavos min haTorah. He is yoitze v'dechavos. Why? Shashemeya hu keoimer. If you notice, everyone knows Shemea Koiner. No, he said Koimer. Why did he say Shemea Koimer? Because he just told you before you have to count. You don't have to hear. You have to say it. That's why he said Shemea Koimer. The din of Shemea Koiner is going to be here like Koimer. But you have to hear from someone that's mechuyev. You cannot hear from Stam, from a cotton, from a Isha. You cannot hear. You have to hear someone mechuyev. Someone mechuyev doesn't mean that he's mechuyev now. He should be mechuyev. But if he's mechuyev, in general, even if he's not mechuyev now, because he already counted, there's no problem. Mechuyev b'mitzvah zu, not that he's mechuyev achshav. Again, very, very, very clear. HaMechuyev b'mitzvah zu, not mechuyev b'chlal. Now, Mechuyev mitzvah, in der mitzvah is mechuyev, not a man, not a woman, not this. ויש חולקים על זה ואומרים שצורך שתי ספירה לכל אחד ואחד ממש. That you have to have a sphere for each one mamish. He adds the word mamish. Shekol echad yisper la'atzmui. And lahalocha, what does he say? In other words, that he should not be yoitze. That's the reason that you hear the chazan. No, no, you can't by yourself. ויש לוחש לדבריהם לכתחילה שלא יסמך על שמי הספירה מהשץ. But then he brings the brocha, you could hear lechatchila from the chazan is not a problem because bechlal and this and this. The importance of that is bringing out is that people think, oh, if I didn't count one day or I forgot and I forgot to count one day, then the next day is not the same. It is the same, exactly the same. Maybe to one opinion, it's not considered. Therefore, you don't call a brocha, whatever. But it is the same. So I mean, because I see now, I thought it's going to take 2-3 minutes. It takes much longer. This see if really we go back to the Mekoiris and we really see there's asach merit to learn. But before we go weiter, he's hinting here a lot of things. Amongst that, he's hinting if someone forgot, because he says over here. When he says she yisper kol echad miYisrael shiva yomim, so I told you already that when he says later in Sisif, hey, that days or weeks, whichever there's a machloikis, so he sees that. Then he has another machloikis. The other machloikis is going to be, we're going to go back. So I want to go back to the Mekoiris. Everyone knows the Shittas Bahag. It's a famous Shittas Bahag. What is the Shittas Bahag? What are we talking about? Talking about is there is, and that's going to be Negei Lepel, and it's going to be very much Negei Lepel every year and almost every day. Constantly. I forgot. I don't know if I forgot. I said Beshkia, I said Babin Hashmoshes, I said the next one, I have a Sofek, and I have a Svek, I have a Svek. What's Tutzich over here? And what is the Alter Rebbe shitting about? So whatever the Alter Rebbe doesn't write, we don't know. And this is where one item that is not clear, we don't know. We have a shtickle dilemma. What? But if you learn between the lines, you learn a lot of things. There's a Toisus in Menoches and a Toisus in Megillah, and that's, it brings down that what is the mitzvah? The Alter Rebbe just said that when do you count? Oh, I didn't finish. Yeah. By the way, Sif Bey says, Noshim ba'avodim p'turim mitzvah zu, mipnei shu mitzvah eser shazman gom. This is later, but he already hinted at in the word the kol echad. That's why I wrote kol echad, to tell you Sif Beis. Because I'm saying every word is calculated. He brings here over here down that the mitzvah of Sfiras Oimer, it should be miyoim akrovas Oimer. When is a krovas Oimer? So really the Korban Oimer is done on the day after Pesach. Not the first day, the second day. By us, it's second day of Pesach, but by Emerson, it's already Chol HaMoed. I mean, it's the first day. There's only one day Yom Tov, say Minat Torah, right? The second day is they bring the Oimer. So really, we should count Sfira from the Oimer, but we bring the Oimer Krovas. I missed it over here. Huh? You have to. The Gemara says you have to bring it. You have to. From when you cut liktzer, when you cut already to prepare the oimer, and when do you do that? The day before. The day before you bring. V'ksartem is ktsiro, v'aveisim is oimer. Right? Then so because the Torah says Sheva Shabbos is timimois, should be complete, full. And how do you have full? If you start the night before, if you start in the morning, you'll miss the night. So you start from the night before you start. So therefore, being that the Torah doesn't tell you one time to come by night and one time to come by day, so you count Night, you count always in the beginning of the night. Right? Mitzvahs Eser. I didn't.
Even though you open the Omer to the daytime, you start counting that before.
You counted before, because he said over here. I don't want to say Siv Gimel. He says Zman HaKrovas Omer u'b'tay Zayin b'Nisan, right? Ve'iyar efshar latchil asfira b'yom v'osei mamish, because it says Tmimis tiyeno, right? And you start by Erev. Which Erev? The night before. So really, the whole night is kosher. But you should do it, lechatchila mitzvah min hamufre, to do it right at the beginning, miyad achat tfilas arvis. Right after Ma'ariv. And we do it so close, we do it noch before Leinu. Not everyone does it like that. Because the Alter writes, miyad achat tfilas arvis. Achat tfilas arvis is Shemoneh already. So the Welt finishes Leinu. But we want gleich noch ein Davening. Wie noch mit Kedach so, you finish davening, you count. So this we do it. So we start right by night. Now, so the Mishnah says, Edin, what all the things that you have to do by night, you have to do by night. You have to do by day, you do by day. Then the Mishnah says, whatever you do by night, you do by night. Counting Sfiras Omer is by night. So what we learn from that is that you can only count by night. Tosis learns that a lot of Rishonim learn like that. You count only by night. You can count only by night. By day? No, the same thing. That whatever you bring by day, you can only do by day. You can do by night. So the same thing, the thing that you do by night, you cannot do the whole night, kosher till the morning. Do it early, but you have the whole night. But only night, not by day. Then there is a Bahag. Bahag is Balalochas Gedoyles. Yeah. Tosis brings him down. And his shita is, because there's another Mishnah in Gemara Megillah, and it's a Mishnah, it's a little complicated. It's a very long, it's a long thesis. And so his shita is that, yes, you should do it by night, but you can also do it by day. Toises is not masking with that in one Gemara, in Gemara Megillah. Why? Because he says that in the Mishnah of Megillah, when he brings down all the dinim la'alocha la'maisa, he tells you this. So la'alocha la'maisa, he tells you that cutting you should do only by night. So you have to do it only by night. So the Bahag holds you also do it only by night. You could do it also by day. That's what the Bahag holds. Okay. It's saying the Bracha Sfiras Omer. Other Rishonim say, no, you can only do it by night. You can't count by day. You have to do it by day. Now there's one other machlokes. Now, I mean, there's a few shittas, by the way, here, but I'm not going to get to it.
I forgot, they would cut it by night. By night or by day?
By night. Cut it the day before.
No, during the night.
Right.
Okay, right.
So you already can count. Because the cold means that by day. But because the Havos, so when we count, Reish is Ktsire. Ein Bisman Ktsirosei. Ktsirosei is Koidem Avosei. Before you bring it, not after that, right? Ktsire comes before bringing it. And you bring the Oimer by day, the first day. So before. So when before? So it's already by night. So by night, you should do it already in the beginning of the night. So most of the Rishonim, we're going to get into it, most of the Rishonim hold that you can only count by night. You cannot count by day. The Bahag holds that you can count by day. Hey. Yeah. One place is not mashma like this, but there's one other machlokes. And again, the Bahag comes to play. Tumimois. What does it mean, Tumimois? A set of 49. That's what the Bahag said. You missed one day, you're out. You're out. From A to Z. There's another sheet that says no. You have to start from A to Z. One and the last. In the middle, you missed. You didn't miss. If you didn't miss the first night, you're in business. It's no problem. You can miss here, miss here. Don't care. You'll have the first one. You're gonna have the last one. The middle are like in the middle. That's a middle shitter. But then there is the majority of the shittas, which is Toisus, yeah? Every night is a mitzvah. Araya, you make a brocha every night. How can you make a brocha on one thing, one pack? You make a brocha. Every night is another thing, again and again. It's a mitzvah. You count it today. So
if you miss one,
you missed one, it's no problem.
you can continue making
A brocha. Even though I hold that you cannot count by day, but if you missed, you can count a brocha. However, the Alter Rebbe goes, and he brings down a lot here from Pri Chodosh, Fuchot Yaakov, whichever. But he's going to go with a shita called Tumas Hadeshin, which is a Rishon, and he tries to make a lot of pshoras. And one of the pshoras is, he says like this, Nachon, each night is another mitzvah. And that's why, lahalocha, many, they do not go like the Alter Rebbe. Forgot a night, count weiter. Everyone holds it. Bahag halt nicht so. Okay. Everyone holds it. That's a set. The nicest thing is that Tosfos writes on the Bahag very sharp words. The Bahag, he brings down the Bahag over here. Oh, I gave you the Gemara Menachos. I need it over here. Oh, I have it. No. Megillah. No, I have it over here. In the end of Tosfos, he says like this. Give a cook. Oin posak v'alochos gedoyles, she'im hifsik yoyim echot, if he stopped and he broke it one day, v'lo yisofar, shuv ein yisofar, shouldn't count. When it means shouldn't count, means it's worthless. Yeah, with a broch, shuv ein yisofar, it's not in the mitzvah anymore. You could count, but it's worthless. Mishum deboye tmimus, because you have to have tmimus. Says Tosfos, that's the last line. Menachos HaMechvov at the end. V'teimo gedoyle hui. V'teimo gedoyle means a big wonder, and you know what he finishes off? V'lo yitochen. Ken ish gehen azach. Doesn't make sense. So therefore, a lot of them are not going to pass. But the Alter Rebbe comes with a merdik vote, which I told you, the Tumas Hadeshim says this. Sofik broches lahokel. We just established Sfiras or Oimer is all about the counting, not the brocha. The people think, oh, I don't want to make a brocha, I'm going Shnein. It's the counting is a mitzvah esek. Even though he says it's in the Rabbanon, v'cheiniker, or zeichel, whatever, but the counting is it. This is it. You can't even have someone doing it for you. You have to count mamish.
So therefore, you make a bracha at the counting.
So therefore, you make a bracha. And if you forgot, don't make a bracha and count it. So the bracha is lahokel.
A biyetza for some.
So the bracha is lahokel. He says count without a bracha. You want to be yoytze someone, then for sure then you win-win.
You can't be yetza for anybody.
No, it can't be yoytze. The sfira. The bracha. The bracha. He said you should.
Oh.
The bracha is no problem. It's a sfira. So therefore, he says if you forgot, says the Alter Rebbe, count again. Now, what happens if I didn't count by night and I counted by day? Even though those that hold in a separate mitzvah, it's worthless. But why don't I make a bracha? Because of the Bahag. But the Bahag tells me that I can count by day. So according to the Bahag, I have done the right thing. I have done. Therefore, I can continue to count with a bracha. If you're telling me that I forgot to count by night and it's not complete according to the Bahag, and therefore I can't make a bracha. But the Bahag told me that I can count by day.
So you think it's not a svek faker. The same sheet that which says the problem by missing.
Plug in because it's a battery.
It's not a svek faker. It's more than that. It's
not a svek faker.
It's the same sheet which says you.
No svek faker. No svek faker. Same sheet that tells you
that missing a day is a problem. Holds that counting by day is not called missing.
Yeah, but be'emes lav davke, because lav davke the Bahag holds that you can count weiter. You should count by day with a brocha. That's lav davke. So therefore, it's a shtickle. He says
That's clear b'chlal,
he says because the suffix is not such a brochus local is not so stark. But now we get to another nekuda. The another nekuda is I forgot if I counted. That's the second. When I forgot if I counted, I don't know if I counted. According to the Ri, according to Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam, very strong, and Bayab, continue to count. No, not the Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam holds he can't count by day. So absolutely he can't count by day. So anyway, let's establish one thing. Someone didn't count by night and they counted by day. But I'm telling him to count by day without a brocha. Why am I telling him to count without a brocha? Because according to Tosfos, according to Rabbeinu Tam, he can't count by day. So I don't want you to count with a brocha. However, according to the Bahag, it's good enough that I counted, so therefore I can count the next night. Good. What happens if I forgot to count? I forgot if I counted. I forgot if I forgot.
But you're not sure if you counted last night. You don't remember if you counted.
And I don't remember. Doesn't happen all the time.
You went down with a million.
Right.
Oh, I don't know if I was by minion.
That's already too much.
Yeah, but Shabbos, Friday night.
Doesn't it depend how many days you count?
You done Mavoida, you forgot.
Huh?
I didn't remember.
Doesn't it depend how many days? If you're already 30 days in,
You don't have you need 90.
it's 31 days. Then
Yeah, when you say it, you're not going to make a mistake and say a different thing. But to say it bechlal, you can forget sometimes. You did your whole life you davened, and you can one day forget if you daven Ma'ariv. Or you daven Mincha.
Right, for something to do without a bracha, they would say during the day.
We should. Sure, I say. Yeah. You should. But the day when you forget to say it by day over. Anyway, so what happens if someone forgot? If he forgot, so I would say normally, I would think, hell, you forgot if you said to continue without a bracha, like the Alter Rebbe established. So with brochas local, and this comes the Alter Rebbe and he uses the word from the Tumas Hadesh and says like this. But Emerson, it's a whole suffix bichlal. Because really, we say that he can count with the bracha. Because Tosfos holds he can count with the bracha. No worse, the Bahag holds that he can't count if you missed one day. But everyone says he can count. The others say he can count. Now, you don't know if you have a problem with Bahag or not. You don't know. It's a suffix. So they'll use the word svek sveka. It's not really svek sveka. Svek sveka means you have a suffix if I put in over here something. And then I have a suffix if it comes from. Yeah. But here it's not really svek sveka. If it's still a svek sveka, it could always be suffix in brochas lahokel. We should always go brochas lahokel. But he uses the word svek sveka, meaning suffix if the halacha is like the Bahag or not. Suffix if he forgot. So it's svek sveka, no macha brocha, which leads us to another thing. What happens if he did count by day, but he counted ben hashmoshes? Can we say this svek sveka also?
The next day.
Previous day, whatever it is. But for the next day we could. But ben hashmoshes, he says it's yes. The first ben hashmoshes, Alter Rebbe uses yes, the same thing. The first ben hashmoshes, bichlal, he says the first ben hashmoshes is you can do that because midrabanon. It's la halacha sphere so it's midrabanon, and this is a suffix if it's night already, so you can count with the brocha. Suffix and is the rabbanon. The suffix if it's laila, suffix it is. In Mamela, you can count already ben hashmoshes. You can, if it's already ben hashmoshes the next night, you can count for the next night. Okay. Anyway, I didn't think I'm going to go so long. I wanted to go be something Hilchos of Sfiras Omer. I'm going to have another chance to speak about Hilchos Sfiras Omer. So I want to push it midag. The bottom line is that's a very simple thing. Someone counted in Ben Hashmoshes the night before is no problem. With the shtickle problem that we have is if he counted, Shabbos, I came to shul Friday night, and younger man tells me that at home by him, whatever, someone counted, told me exactly when, 8 or 9, whichever. It's exactly Ben Hashmoshes. That person counted for the night, for the day before. No. Can they continue with the brocha? Can they not continue with the brocha? It's Ben Hashmoshes. Can I use the Svek Sveker? Maybe Svek Sveker, noch a Svek Sveker? But they would be a Svek Sveker. What's Ben Hashmoshes? A Svek Sveker, Shem a Svek Sveker? Or not? It's any night. If he forgot, he tell me, he forgot. If he doesn't know, count with the brocha. So Simon as whatever. So he can lean like this. Yes.
He counted Thursday night.
Friday night. I was Friday. Friday night by Shabbos. He comes into Kabbalah Shabbos. He tells me 8 or 9. This is his words. Rav, 8 or 9 was counted. Can we continue with the bracha or not?
That night? So
Exactly.
Count right now. What's the problem?
No, he can't for the
Thursday night. That's what I said.
So Friday night, 8 or 9, he counted for Thursday.
Oh, I see.
He would have been 20 minutes earlier, would be no problem.
I see.
Not 20 minutes earlier. 49, I told him. 49 was Shkia. 48, so 47 would be no problem. According to the right? This few minutes. Now, 5 minutes later, there's no shaila. There's not even a shaila. It's over. What does he do now? Anyway, Stam, I'm saying that very interesting. We learn a lot of things. Tov Tzadik Gimel Zeichne Geya. I said I had another shaila. Bas mitzvah, huh?
What you tell him to do.
I told him to do it. I told him to. Anyway, was ich will always bring is, I want to say just this. The Alter Rebbe says starts Tov Tzadik Gimel. Sfiras Omer is poshet am mitzvah either min haTorah or mit Rabbanon, but we're talking about Sfiras Omer. Then you have another thing. Dinim anoying b'mei Omer. A young man comes to me, tells me, can I make construction in Sfiras Omer? A good shaila, right? There is dinim anoying b'mei Omer. But the Alter Rebbe writes first word, noy hagin, sheloi liso isho. It's not a din. It's not a din. There's a minhagim and there's dinim. What I'm saying is no dinim and the minhagim. There's a big difference between is a din Shulchan Aruch or if it's a minig. And Gemara asked me today if we can go. Yes, the outside we can go. We can go to the cemetery to his father today. I told him today al pi din. There is no Isser in Rosh Chodesh to go. Minhag, and we the minhag, we showing him whatever. So what's the difference? The difference is if it's a minhag, so how the minhag is given stark. And now we're going to see now. No, Hagin sees a minhag, doesn't say in the Rambam. You don't have it in the Rambam in this. It's nothing to do with Sfiras Omer. The Noyagin, what we mourn and fear and Noyagin with Bimei HaOimer is not the Oimer. It's not because of Sfiras Omer. Yes, at all the days of Sfiras Omer, that includes Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed is also Sfiras Omer, not because of Sfiras Omer, because, like the Alter Rebbe explains, Misablin al Chov Dalad Alofim mit Talmid Rebbe Akiva. 24,000 Talmidim passed away. Memela is a minig, became a minig. But not from you don't have it in the Rambam. You have it in Shulchan Aruch, but you don't have it in the Rambam, right? However, therefore, because it's a minig, and it's not a din, you're allowed to make a shidduch. You're allowed to have a vote. Avol, and that's very important to see. Every word is counted over here, and the way people learn in the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe writes it, this is the Ramah, but it's different than others. They should not make, Rikudin means dancing alone. No. Doesn't say a word of I didn't say a word of music. Rikudin. It doesn't say the music. Rikudin is not dancing together. Mecholos means when Mashiach is going to come, it says it's going to be mochel, a circle. The Rikudin is dancing alone. You're dancing alone. Rikudin means dancing alone. You shouldn't dance. You know, there's sometimes someone dances and everyone watches him, yeah? Rikudin and mecholos. ואין צורך לא אמר שלא יעשה ריקוד ומחול של רשוס. סתם a party with dancing, you're not allowed. אבל מותר לעשות סעודת הרשוס, כגון שמחת מרץ. You're allowed to make, now, the way we're making now, farbrengen, שמחת מרץ, you're allowed to make. בלוי ריקודין ומחולס, but the Alter Rebbe adds one word, and this is the Choik Yaakov. Usmochis Yiseris, with Simchis Yiseris.
Don't overdo it.
No, Simchis Yiseris means real joy. That's what it means is music. Something that makes music. So it doesn't say over here music because you didn't have in his times music. It says no dancing. So in other words, like this, you can make a Suda, but you should not have dancing coming out from the. So therefore, obviously, you can't have music that's going to make you dance. With Simchas Yiseris, even if you don't dance, you're not allowed to dance. Oh, but you're not allowed to have the joy of dancing. Without dancing, that's music.
Slow music is okay.
So obviously, you're allowed to have slow music. Why not? Why shouldn't you? Something achsidische Nigen in the back, was macht nicht tanzen? Steht nicht. Simcha Yisera. A Nigen, a herzige Nigen. No, it's a tape, because it has a tape, so what? Masha'enkin, regular music without dancing, you'd have a problem. Stam dancing, if you really joy without music, you shouldn't also. Because we can dancing. So, I can't still more, but this is the thing though. So now, he says, the other people, they say, no, we should, because of that, we know we allowed to dance because, and you could have a simchas with dancing, with slow music, because he means that we are dancing with music, and if the music doesn't make you dance, and you're dancing because you're dancing slow, then maybe you can, whatever. But in Alter Rebbe, you don't have that. And Alter Rebbe is madrish towards simchas Yisrael, others different than others. You understand? It doesn't say Shulchan Aruch.
The concerts and
Sicher nicht.
the whole sort of.
The whole sphere is over. But later he's going to speak about
Not
it.
so like some people.
From that, but however, this is the only thing that says in Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't say that you can buy clothes. I didn't man. Today, this morning, can I buy shirts? I'm telling you cases where every day. It doesn't say you can't buy clothes. But obviously, being in the Sefer Minogim, the Rebbe brings down that he shouldn't say Shechionu. And what the Rebbe meant by Shechionu, we don't know. Tovchin Choftes in the by the eating, by the Sudas. So they asked the Rashag, I think they asked the Rebbe, from where, wo steht Shechionu? It doesn't say Shechionu. In Bein HaMitzorim, it says you shouldn't have Shechionu. Here it doesn't say. So what? It says not to get married, not to take a haircut, and not to not to have rikudim b'cholet. That's what it says. It doesn't say about Shechionu. So now the Rebbe says, "Azay habe ich gehört from the Frierdiker Rebbe." So they asked him in Chof Tes. They asked the Rebbe, "Was he mit Shabbos Lag Boimer?" Because in other in Kitzur, in other places it says that you could have a Shabbos, otherwise it doesn't say. So the Rebbe said, I didn't hear because I didn't ask. If I would have asked, he would have answered me, but I didn't ask. Okay. Aber Baruch Hashem Nizgale geworden in Lubavitch, then in Tovshin Mem Tes, there were the two Rabbonim and given by the Rabbonim Aroshim were by Nichilis by the Rebbe. And Rav Eliyahu asked the Rebbe, what's the Lubavitch minig with Shechionu? Because his father don't make Shechionu, Ashkenaz doesn't make Shechionu. Steht nicht. It doesn't say that you shouldn't make. Why can't you make? We don't buy new clothes because why not? because you don't make shechionu, and then the clothes that you'd make shechionu, what clothes would you make a shechionu? A shena zach, a sartuk, a hat, a bechubah dike zach. You'd make shechionu on that. Don't buy that. You understand? If it's very choshev. If it's not choshev for you and you buy all the time, no big deal, shirts. You wouldn't make even a shechionu, even, it's not a big deal. You don't, it's not a great excitement.
Those who made a shechionu when their wife had a baby boy, what would they do? They wouldn't say shechionu.
Oh, okay. So ask me better. If I have a fruit. I have a new fruit.
Don't eat. But your wife, you can't tell them to give birth.
What do you mean? What do you mean don't eat? What do you mean don't eat? I have a new fruit. I'm not allowed to eat now. 3 weeks I'm not allowed to eat. But it doesn't even say. So this is the scholar from the Rebbe. It's very interesting. The Rebbe told Rav Eliyahu, even though in Chovtes he said like that.
On tape or
on tape. He said in the Chidus to Mordechai Eliyahu asked the Rebbe, "What is the minhag Chabad on shechionu?" And the Rebbe answered him, "We don't say shechionu, and on Shabbos, Lag Boimer, we do say." So if you have a new fruit, you say it, and on Shabbos, Lag Boimer. Poshet, the Rebbe said, told him. Choftesi said he didn't hear from Frierdiker Rebbe. It's in Sicha, I don't know. Mugadik, not Mugadik. Someone quotes, I don't know. So we know that. So the dinim from Sphira is not. It's a minhag from Avelus. Or in Shulchan Aruch it says not to take a haircut, not to stopper. Stopper means taking a haircut. It doesn't mean certain things that people say, I'm allowed to take hair, this. What are you allowed to take off? Please stop it to take a haircut. Therefore the people don't take beards because this legalech is sicher nicht, whatever. And the same thing goes rikudim and mecheles. Yes, this you shouldn't do. You can do music of dancing. You can move on. Someone makes exercise and they have to hear music. No, whatever. Or a Mensch schreibt. The writer, they schreiben, and they must not some music. It doesn't make him dance. It makes him over. So why not? Doesn't it say even this idea of not to get married that's only to if it's not to be no, he says why you're allowed to make. I think skipped it. Why you're allowed to make it noim? So you can say I see mazel. Doesn't matter. Mazel.
No, I'm asking something else. Doesn't it say that even the issue of getting married in spirit does not apply to somebody who's not the kind of agreement? Does it say that somewhere? There was somewhere other paskin?
No, he says, "Mutar mishlei kim adam mitzvah shemshana kim shemutar kim shemutar loy."
Oh, maybe something about
And then he's allowed to get married.
Right.
But we don't do kiddushin because he said over here about kiddushin. Huh? Yeah, that's why Midrach that's the reason the far Megmanes machen is so immer because durch Tfilas can biten exactly. So therefore you're allowed. Otherwise, what nicht given this thing. Okay. Anyway, Rabbi said. I wanted just to.
What happens if you made a mistake? You say 14 days, you counted 13 or 15 or 16.
Yeah.
So the next day you would say
no. Yeah, if you counted wrong,
yes,
then you didn't count.
You didn't count it, and you missed the day.
You missed the day. You counted wrong. You missed the count. If you're not sure, you can count. More than that, if you passed by and you heard them saying it, you are yoitze from them. You have to have in mind to dafke not be yoitze. Not to have in mind to be yoitze. You have to have in mind not to be yoitze. To be yoitze, to not. To not to be yoitze. And if you passed by and you say, I didn't count, but I heard. For sure enough to count for a brocha. Next. And because the Alter Rebbe says you shouldn't count again with a brocha. If you can't even count again with a brocha. If you heard and you didn't have in mind not to be yoitza, So when you go into shuls and you hear this, you have to remind, no, I do not.
You're for the chazan every night.
Every chazan, you have in mind not to be yoitzer.
Because you want to say bracha, you say. Okay.
Right, you're getting ready to now. You don't want to hear. You say, "Oh, but you want to." Okay, I'm ready to start. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. But if you go into another shul, another minyan, and you hear them saying, and you don't, I said, I'm anyway not yoitzer. Says Al Rebbe, saying anyway not yoitzer is not good enough. It doesn't matter. He says you might be yoitzer. Therefore, when you come to count, don't say a bracha. I say to someone, "What's today?" And I'm going to tell him, today is this and this day. I didn't mean. Doesn't matter. You didn't mean. But he didn't mean not to. And therefore, you shouldn't count with the bracha, right? Same thing if you passed by, which helps you, if someone forgets, and he passed by, and he heard, that it should be considered as this. Anyway, Rabbi, we don't L'chaim, we don't sing Anig, Go ask somebody, it's going to be matter. I told him, go to someone that's going. I'm telling you now that I'm not going to make you comfortable. I didn't want to. Er fragt mir alles. Ich kann nicht gewollt. Ich wollte ihn so nehmen. It's nicht geschwert. Dean, you know, it's just...
He said leave it at 9:30, so how long will it take to get it?
He's got mine.
Is that mine then? No, is that mine before?
Usually that was regular minyan.
Yeah, whatever, listen. We come when it comes, if it comes
Chaim.
Oh, the big one. Yeah. Oh. Zalman. Maybe Zalman could just start talking.
Gewaltig. He has a good life. Him is a good life.
Yeah.
Ja, immer gucken, man muss nachher noch.
Buy a shirt?
What? Yes. Yes, I said yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Pants also.
Some people, they buy once in 2 years. They don't make shechionu, but they would have if it's an excitement like a shechionu. A talis. We don't make shechionu talis. But to buy a talis in the 3 days, you don't buy every day. Why don't we make bichlal? Yeah, the shayla is very good there, and I'll make it. Yeah, I know because I'll make it a little starker, the shaila, and I'll leave it with the shaila. And a fruit you make.
Yeah.
We don't make on a clothes.
Yeah,
We don't make on a house. We don't make in a house. A house. Chanukah Sabayis, a huiz, and a fruit. Mizman lezman. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't come too often. Comes. Yeah. Every in the Welt makes.
They never made a scarf.
No, you made anyway. You would make anyway. Okay. Anyway, Rabbi Say, I want to share and it could I can't say bais iyar because bais iyar I'm going to leave. We can say bais iyar. Bais iyar is unbelievable. I'm in the medical field. Ani Hashem rifecho. Was is the ganze gadlus that iyar should be Ani Hashem rifecho? Why? And should we make a surgery on Sfira? Someone needs to make. Should we make it on Sfira day? Yeah. Is it better? Oh, it's okay. Oh, I need to have. And what's Shatani Hashem Rifecha? What's Shatani Hashem Rifecha? The sikhs from the Rebbe, sometimes you have a one-liner or five-liners that bring this. Rabbi Yisrael, what doctor? For what's Ani Hashem Rifecha? Why is there Ani Hashem Rifecha? The dinner vote. The dinner vote. Very good. Yes, the dinner vote. Ani Hashem Rifecha. He says like this. The Alter Rebbe brings in Shulchan Aruch that we have to do certain things because Chavdalad 11 Talmidim passed away in the Sfira day. Why did it pass away? Punkt in the Sfira day. Punkt worked out. Exactly. Sfira day. What's the cheshbon? What's the cheshbon for Sfira day? So there's a night, happened to be the night Chasam Sofer, which is also Marshon, and the Gemara of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, it's the Gemara Yevomis, that says about the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva that they passed away, the ganze does, and it's not exaggeration, because Alter Rebbe schreibt this to Shulchan Aruch. He doesn't want to exaggerate. Alter Rebbe doesn't. What's the reason Alter Rebbe schreibt in Shulchan Aruch the letters? Always gerechnet. He doesn't want. Oh, Mensch, stam dvorim avoy stam. That's why he schreibt in Shulchan Aruch word by word. Why did they pass away in those? Zog the Marsho, and really the Chasam Sofer in Gemara Shabbos brings it down. There's a Gemara Shabbos. We learn Hilchos Shabbos. There's a Gemara Shabbos, and the Mishnah that says you're not allowed to make exercise on Shabbos. Why aren't you allowed to make exercise on Shabbos? Because we schwitzt, and schwitzen is gesund, and you're not allowed to make medicine on Shabbos. Says the Gemara that there is a lake called Dumses. Dumses had a floor, was given warm, heat, und so gemacht schwitzen. And Tomen is going dort, you're not allowed to go there because it makes you exercise. Sagt Shmuel, as you know when you're not allowed to go there? Mi Pesach ad Shavuos. Pesach ad Shavuos. Says the Gemara, Shmuel says, from Pesach and Shavuos, all medicine is good. All medicine is good. For what all medicine is good? That is the Gemara. Now Shmuel, he given a verstand in medicine. He was a scientist. He was a physician. He knew medicine. You can see in a lot of cases he says, "Oh, medicine. Don't think it's medicine. The best. All medicines go out Pesach and Shavuos." Says the Chasam Sofer, and the Marsho says in the Gemara in Yevomis says like this: that you know why all medicines work in Pesach and Shavuos? They mean really iyar. They don't mean Pesach and Shavuos. They mean iyar. They chap on Pesach and Shavuos because iyar is a full month. Why? Talmidei Rabbi Akiva passed away in a time when it was the best time of medicine. Das nicht meinen, oh, you know what? Sie gewinnen a pandemic. Sie gewinnen a winter, a gefrorene winter. Wir gewinnen kalt. Sie gewinnen a Hung. Nein. Iyar, Pesach and Shavuos, this is the time of healing. And the Eberstock gewinnen weisen bei Hashgocha, they passed away, nothing to do with any machlis, any diseases, because this is the best time of gesund. So that's out fine and good. What? So now comes your vote. The one was, I saw a vote, but this is Sheikhs, I want to get to the Rebbe Sicher. The Mon is gegeben geworden in Iyar. The Mon. Why was the Mon gegeben geworden in Iyar? Because really, it was a bad time. Why is it a bad time? Whenever Ruchnis is bad, this is the Rebbe explains why we learn Pirkei Avos. Whenever the summer comes out, it blooms, es ist dort der alle Hergeishim, der alle Gashmisdike Sachen, der Ruchnis wird schwach. Ruchnis wird schwach, wird begashmis gesund, not good. Der Rebbe sagt sie eine Sache, Ruchnis und Gashmis ist eine Sache. Man wird schwach in Ruchnis, wird man schwach in Gashmis. So der Eibishter made protection, or to gegeben am Mon in Davki in a bad time. The money given a mon, this comes in the vote, that the mon made, it should be a good mon to make it, as a very gesund, so the lechem abirim, so lechem gesund to essen, and it gives you a health food, and the mon is given poil the oil of void, that Iyar is allemal a gesund to chodesh, because by Emerson it's not a good chodesh, and it's by Emerson, if you think about it, we know it's alle dinim, so the gvura, sie say ihnen von Gewura, belegt Achemoid, alle Sachen, ist Gewura. Aber Eibishter made it should be Ani Hashem Rifecha, it should be gewaltig. And it starts right in the beginning, mit Tachnun. Bais Iyar is after months, we didn't say Tachnun. Wie geht das? Bais Iyar, mit Tachnun. It's doch beide Sachen. This is the Rebbe, we bring to so is. That's the side, the Indian von unbelievable, aber es ist dort ihnen von Tachnun, L'chaim. So sein gesund. Bei Ruchnis, bei Gashmis und bei Ruchnis. L'chaim. Nein, das steht in Forum Kisvei Ariza. Kisvei Ariza, Ani Hashem Rifecha, everyone brings it down. Kisvei Ariza, Ani Hashem Rifecha. The Rebbe says, why there's two youths? Why should be one yud and two yud? So the Rebbe says, Nikro v'nichtov. Yud, the first yud is of Yud Kevovke, and the second yud geht of Adnai, and the far. Das der Rebbe sagt, es sei mit ein Juden, mit zwei Juden, und so weiter.
You want yellow or white?
We almost gave up. Thank you.
Yeah, this farbrengen is sponsored. This Rus, Hayela, Shmuel, Ben Chaimushka. Galadan, Taylor, Kupa, Mason, Taylor. This is our anicle. That anicle.
Today, they're the breeze.
A yingo. Small. That matter.
What's that? Shmuel Levit is noch Marash.
Come on.
Nein, aber doch, man muss doch nicht retten, bei Iyar.
Yeah, you can start about bais here.
Bei Iyar, we left it. Both for you.
Yeah.
We don't get
Let it know. Yeah, we're saying.
Nicht ad kidei kach, you know.
You lost 5.
Lost everything.
I don't need the whole. Next week.
No.
So you get some done.
All right.
Start at 8:30. Might as well 8:30. Not
I don't know.
Can't hear.
The other was very busy. They had to run to
For what?
Christmas Shalom.
opstellen de free van
Chaim.
van net.
He's on nets, yeah. Hot in the minion.
So can we see the master's thing? Is that okay?
Yeah.
As you mentioned just before, this is also, besides being the emeritus of the Reb Marash, we have a personal interest. It's we have a personal interest in this, that we just had an Einikol, and it was named Shmuel ben Menachem Mendel. I have to say that because otherwise she'll be makpid. How comes it's not Menachem Mendel? Okay. So just a little bit about the name of the Reb Marash. It's known that by the day when it came to the bris the day of the bris of the Rebbe Marash. So the bris was called whatever time in the morning after Shacharis, and the Tzemach Tzedek went to his room, and they're waiting. An hour goes past, and still the Tzemach Tzedek is in his room. Who was there? One of the people who was there waiting for the bris was Reb Chaim Avraham, who was the Alter Rebbe's son, who was known to be a sheisik. He was very quiet, didn't say too much. And he sees that Tzemach Tzedek's not coming out. He says, Mistama, he is Fanuman with more Choshev people. Anyway, they're waiting, and the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka is wondering what's going on. So she sent somebody to find out when's going to be the bris. And the shliach, whoever it was going to the Tzemach Tzedek, and somebody stopped him and said, don't disturb. If the Rebbe is not coming out, there's a good reason for it. Finally, at some point, the Tzemach Tzedek opens up the door and announces the bris will be today. Bris will be today. Should hope so. It's the 8th day. But that was the announcement. Then, at some point, the Tzemach Tzedek sent, I think, again a shliach out to the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, to tell her the bris is going to be today. And they're still waiting. A few hours go by. Finally, the Tzemach Tzedek goes out of his room and goes to the Rebbetzin to discuss something. We assume he was discussing the name. And then later on, it took a few hours, finally, the bris happened because Shmei Yisrael Shmuel. And by the Suda, I don't remember which son of the Tzemach Tzedek said to the Tzemach Tzedek, who's Shmuel? We don't have Shmuel in the family. So he said it's named after a water carrier in Polotsk. But the Chevra Kadisha are Batlonim. That's why we had to postpone the bris. And if he said those words, but Be'erach, that was the idea. What happened was, there was a water carrier in Polotsk whose name was Shmuel, who just passed away. Vice Stacy was in Tzadikim Nistorim. He was a water carrier. If you do the word from Rabbi Yisrael Bar Shem Tov, that Amazet Wasser, Amazon, the Bar Shem Tov sagt, that's a Simon Bracha. So whatever it was, this water carrier, Shmuel, had passed away that day, and for some reason, whoever was responsible for making it happen, they were delaying it. So the Tzemach Tzedek was waiting till after the Kvura to name the Rebbe Marash after this person. So we have no idea who this was, but this is where the source. This is where the Tzemach Tzedek said that the name of the Rebbe Marash comes from. Of course, the Rebbe Marash was the youngest of all the children, and when it came to Tafresh Chavov, already in the beginning of the year, at some point, the Tzemach Tzedek gave out a zettel telling the Rebbe Marash that he should start saying Chassidus, should start saying Maimorim. The truth is, other brothers of the Rebbe Marash, other sons of the Tzemach Tzedek, had themselves also been around town, and they had some of them had become Rebbes in their own right in different shtetl. But I don't know if they were told by the Tzemach Tzedek to say Maimorim, but the Rebbe Marash was told to start saying Maimorim. And then at some point, the Tzemach Tzedek gave out a zettel to the Rebbe Marash, and he says, "Hadach sholocha hutev be'enai." I'm pleased with your chassidus, and you should continue. And it says that in other places, some part of what I'm saying now is brought down in the Sefer Toldos of the Rebbe Marash, which is the only Sefer Toldos that the Rebbe made. And in other places, brought down Sipur that the Tzemach Tzedek, B'meshech, a certain Tkufa, kept on saying, whenever the Rebbe Marash used to learn privately with him, the Tzemach Tzedek would sometimes say, Vayomas Yosef v'chol echa v'chol hadeirahu. He would say this to the Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe Marash would pretend, would have a smile on his face, as if it wasn't negate to him. He didn't understand what his father was talking about. But later on, he would go to his room and he would cry. Upon him, it came the time, in Tafresh Chavov, it came the Gimel Nissen, and then came the Shaila, who's going to take over. Now you have to remember, you're talking about each one of the Bnei HaTzemach Tzedek was in their own right, were big tzaddikim. In fact, when the Fidik Rebbe names them, he calls them Kvei Kedushas Admo, Rabbi Yisrael Noach, Kvei Kedushas Admo, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. Each one was an Admo. The Rebbe spoke about this once in Tafshin and Beis in the Sichas of Sukkos. The Rebbe once said in the Sikha that what's the hero from the fact that the Frierdiker Rebbe calls each one of them Admor. The Rebbe says, based on what we say Yom Tov in the Rebbeinu Shalom, we say Yehiratzen Sheikuyim Banu V'Nocha Olav Ruach Hashem, because we all have a nitzutz of Mashiach, and we all have a nitzutz hastus of more than we think. Therefore, it's not a pella to say Admor even on somebody who is not Mamish and Admor. He's not talking about the Bnei Tzemach Tzedek. Each of them was taka shaykhs to that. But the Rebbe said there shouldn't be any spoil from such a title. I don't know what the Rebbe was talking about, but it seems some people actually took it seriously and they call themselves Admor. But Al Kaponim, the Rebbe said, the Frierdiker Rebbe called each one of the Bnei Tzemach Tzedek Kedusha, so we're not talking about some people. So it was a shayla, who's going to take over? And there were many, many Chassidim who followed the older son. Everybody knew the Maharil, Rabbi Yehuda Leib, was a very dynamic, powerful Rebbe in his own right. In fact, they say that when he davened, nobody could keep from crying. He had such hislavus, whatever it was. And many people went with him. They went off to Koppus, and he became a Rebbe in Koppus. Unfortunately, it didn't last too long, because in Tafresh Chav Zayin, in fact, within the year of the Tzemach Tzedek, he came back to visit Lubavitch. They say that he was so upset to see the matzav in Lubavitch that there was almost no Chassidim left, because they left nothing for the Rebbe Marash Kimat. That he was very upset, and Taka that year in Tafresh Chav Zayin, the Maril passed away. His son took over. That was the Maril, and then there were others. There was Rav Yisrael Melech from Bebreisk, and there was other people who went different places. So the Rebbe Marash remained in Lubavitch. That was the hero of the Tzemach Tzedek, that he should become the next Rebbe. But during the time when this was still going on, within the first few days, you have to remember, if the Tzemach Tzedek was Nistalik, Yud Gimel Nissen, that means you have your Erev Pesach. They stand. There's no Avelis, obviously, in Yom Tov. It's Nifsat Mitzad the Yom Tov. So during Yom Tov, they were saying Maimonim. Each son was saying his own Maimon. And it was a Rachmanas on Reb Shmuel Sefer. Reb Shmuel Sefer was the Schreiber. He was known as Reb Shmuel Schreiber. So he had to write down the Maimonim. So he didn't know who's next. So he had to go to this one here, write down his Maimon, then to the next one. So it was getting quite complicated. So there were different Chassidim who went to different people. One of the Chassidim that remained in Lubavitch and became a Makusha to the Rebbe Marash from the big Chassidim was somebody called Reb Shmuel Ber from Borisov. Reb Shmuel Ber was a big maskil, a big Chassid, and he was asked at some point, how comes he became a kusha to the Rebbe Marash? The youngest son, why did he become a kusha to the Rebbe Marash? It seems not everybody knew that the Tzemach Tzedek had appointed the Rebbe Marash. It wasn't clear. I don't know the situation exactly. What
did Tyra on this?
Right, so it wasn't exactly clear to everyone who's supposed to continue. There was one chassid who came to the Rebbe Marash. He'd gone to all the brothers to hear a maimah. Is it possible it was Kuti Lepra? I'm not sure. One of the big chassidim, he went to all the sons and he heard. Fine, he heard a maimah from this one, heard a maimah from that one. He came to the Rebbe Marash, and in the middle he says, "Oh, dort sich geredet dem Taten. Now I hear the Tzemach Tzedek. Now you're the Rebbe." He's put on a shrine, you're the Rebbe. One of the big chassidim from beforehand. Anyway, this Reb Shmuel Ber was asked at one point, why did he choose to stay with Rebbe Marash? So he says, I'll tell you a Maisa Shehoya. The Maisa was that the Tzemach Tzedek once said a Maimah, and it was a difficult Maimah, and there were kashas on the Maimah. It wasn't so straightforward. He, in particular, had a certain kasha from an Eitz Chaim. We're talking about big chassidim that had a Bekis and in Yoni Kabbalah as well. So he had a kasha from Eitz Chaim that seemed to be a steerer to the words of the Tzemach Tzedek. So he went to all of the sons. This is way before, in the time of the Tzemach Tzedek. So he went to the sons of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Dun Chazorah, and the discussing the Maimah from Shabbos. And he went to one son, what's going to be with this? This doesn't make sense. And he got answers, but they weren't Maspir Ratzon. It wasn't good. Then he came, the younger son, let's try him out. And he goes to the house of the Rebbe Marash. It was late at night. And that was the only light that was on. So he went to the Rebbe Marash. And the Rebbe Marash, he looked through the window to see what's going on in the house. and he sees the Rebbe Marash is stuck the svarim on the table, and he's learning be'iyun. So okay, so he knocks on the door, and he hears a voice. Who's there? He says, this is Shmuel Bear. He says, hold on a minute. Takes a minute or two, then the door opens. Come in. Why are you coming to me this time of night? Is there something important? He says, yeah, I want to discuss something. So he comes into the dining room, whatever it was, and he sees on the table a bunch of newspapers. So he said, I have a shaila on the mind. I want to know if you can give me an answer. I have a stira. She says, you're coming to me? Well, so he said, Reb Shmuel, I saw through the window beforehand what was on the table. You can't hide from me. So the Rebbe Marash realized he was caught red-handed.
But he said, if he not, I will disclose what I saw before in the newspaper.
What's that?
He said, if you're not going to talk to me,
I'm going to disclose, yeah. Even faster, yeah, he threatened him, yeah.
Huh?
He threatened him, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so the Rebbe Marash agreed, sat him down, and he said, Mistama, you have a kasha from here and there. Okay, so let me tell you, and he gave him a clear answer, and everything was misyasha. So when he saw this, he said, from this I realized, he's a hatsnei leches, he doesn't reveal anything, everything's poshut, everything's behalten, but by Emerson, he has everything. This was taka, should we say, the two ksavas by the Rebbe Marash. On the one hand, he behaved like a very balabatish yid. In fact, he was very baharchov in Gashmis. Kiyadua, the Rebbe Zeder of Meir Shlomo, when he came back from being a year, those days they didn't have a kodel, they had a zitza by the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Meir Shlomo was a zitza. That means he sat in Lubavitch for the year after the chasna and he learned. And when he came back after a year, so he came back to his hometown, whatever that was it Nikolaev? So he came back and they gathered together. What did you see by the Rebbe? So he started describing different things, and he also described that the Rebbe Marash has a golden watch, and he has a golden carriage, and he has a golden this and that. So one of the Nish Chassidim that were there said, "Vi pastas a Rebbe having so much Gashmi having gold." So Rebbe Shlomo said, used some Russian word that put him in his place and said, "Who do you think the gold was made for? For me and you. It's lachatchila made for him." As the Rebbe explained that once, because the gold that was created in the world, the gold was created for the Mishkan. Because the Medrash says that the world didn't need Zahav. But the reason why it was created was for the Mishkan. Once it's here already, anybody can get their hands on it. But by Emerson, it's made lachatchila for Kedusha. So the gold was made for tzaddikim, they're the Mishkan. The fact that other people have it, that's something else. But the lachatchila was made for tzaddikim. Anyway, so the Rebbe Marash behaved takabah chova. That means in an ofen, kiyadua the lashon of lachatchila riba. That means he was on a higher. He went above the normal. He was taka very dressed chashuv and went with gold and went with many horses and a nice carriage. Which bepashtas, that's what it means lachatchila riba. Why did he behave like that? Bepashtas. I'm talking about an olam apshat because he used to have to go to deal with all the tzaros that you didn't had back then. He had to go to the Heiche Fensters in the capital, in Moscow. And in order to get there, he wouldn't go via the simple methods of the red tape to get to the top. He would go lachatchila riba, he would go to the highest offices, and he was dressed like an important person. So he went in an ofen lachatchila riba. In fact, he didn't rechen sich, he didn't discuss things with other people. In fact, when there was an asifa once with other Gdolei Yisrael, and the Rebbe Marash got up and said that if we're going to get to this and this gzeira, this is what we have to do. And he starts telling all these Choshev Yidden what to do. So one of them stood up and said, we're not going along with this. You're not asking us, you're telling us. So the Rebbe Marash answered to them, to this, whoever this was. The Rebbe Marash said to him, Revach v'hatzola yamid la Yehudim mimokim acher. Revach v'hatzola will come to the Yidden anyhow. Not if you don't want to join in, we'll get the Revach v'hatzola. Va'atu beisavich tevedu, you're going to be ma'abed the schus. you're going to lose the schus of taking part in this thing. It didn't mean tevedi kipshut. It meant you're going to lose the schus. But that hanhoga of telling them what to do, not asking them, he's telling them this is how it has to be. This is hanhoga of lachatchila riba. The interessant is, there is a kiyadua. The Rebbe was the one that was megala to ask lachatchila riba. I mean, although it says it somewhere, but we would never have made an issue of it. But the Rebbe, whenever he mentions Reb Marash, he says Reb Marash lachatchila riba. It's one sentence. So the Rebbe, in that respect, how should I say it? It's brought down in Chassidus that Spheres HaMalchus is called sometimes a mirror, because it reflects everything, all the spheres that are above. Ulay Shloime, the Rebbe is the Inyan of Malchus, as the Rebbe said, is a mirror, reflects all the other Rabbeim. You can find all the Rabbeim being reflected in the Rebbe. But of all of the Rabbeim, you see very much reflected the Inyan of the Rebbe Marash, the Inyan of Lachatchila Riba, and at the same time, an Hoga of Pashtus. You don't see any big Giluim. But on the other hand, occasionally you see something, but for the most part, the Rebbe is looking inside, making a bracha achrona, and everything walking like a ish pashut, like everything is with pashtus, and at the same time, it's an oifen lachatchila riba. He's doing things, and he's taka not rechnen zich. He's not discussing things with other people. So there's a ma'aser that's told over from Beryl Levy, or Sean, from the founder of the OK, that he used to be a shtickle liaison between who is the organizations over there, the Aguda and whoever, Masorah, Torah Masorah, that he used to go to their meetings, and he would come back to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe sometimes would give eitzes, and sometimes would say, "Don't say it in my name," and it was niskabel because he didn't say it in the Rebbe's name. And sometimes they would criticize, sometimes they would be disrespectful to the Rebbe, and he would bring it back to the Rebbe. I saw on the video, one of the videos, they said that whenever he told the Rebbe what they said about the Rebbe, they said absolutely no reaction. It didn't bother the Rebbe in the slightest.
Why did you have to say it?
Huh?
Why did you have to say that?
The Rebbe wanted to know what happened.
That was his job.
So that was his job, to say what happened. That was his job. Right. So one time, what was the complaint? What was the complaint against the Rebbe? There's two problems. Rechnen sich nicht mit keinem nicht.
Who? What a complaint.
They will complain.
Who was the complaint? Said, what was the complaint?
He's telling you now what the complaint was.
No.
Who was the complaint? I don't know. One of the Gedolei Yisrael.
Who was that complaint?
So Levi is telling the Rebbe what the complaint is. He wants to know what to answer. He wants to know what to answer. So what was the complaint? It was like this.
I know what he spoke, okay? I know what he spoke.
That was Mashlim Zad.
Use other names.
Okay. So I'm just talking about.
He opened his mouth, disgusting. Okay?
Okay. I'm just bringing one particular story.
No, you don't have to.
Yeah. So.
What he opened his mouth, I don't know what to say.
Slowly.
So what?
We know this is saying what was the time?
Yeah, he's saying what the Rebbe said.
I'm not interested in what they said. I'm interested in what the Rebbe said. So
Okay, so
I'm not.
What he said, you don't know what you said.
Okay, whatever. Let's move on. I want to hear what the Rebbe said. I want to hear what the Rebbe said.
Nothing to do with him. He didn't have to be mentioned.
Okay, I'm sorry. Delete. It was somebody. Delete. So somebody brought up that there was a taina for this meeting of Misnagdim, that the taina was that the Rebbe doesn't discuss with them, like the Rebbe Marash doesn't discuss. He decides what to do, makes his own mitzvah, makes his own things. He doesn't discuss with us. We're also Gedolei Yisrael. And then the other Taina was,
Who give those times to
I don't know.
Rabbi Kohen. Wasn't Rabbi Levi, it was Rabbi Kohen.
No, but who brought that to the Rebbe?
Somebody whose name
That gave the difference.
Somebody the name is the
I
leader.
didn't just say what he said.
Somebody the name is the leader. Yeah.
Two people walked out with the farbrengen just
You
now.
where? Yeah.
It's not Negei him, it's Negei what the Rebbe said.
Right.
So the Taina was, number one, that Rechen sich im Kenenish, and the second Taina was that he makes a big issue of the favor from the Medrash. What's the favor from the Medrash? Nisava Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Dira B'Tachteinu. And the whole Torah Slababish is based on Dira B'Tachteinu. A favor from the Medrash. So they make a whole, a favor from the Medrash, you make a big issue of Dira B'Tachteinu, and then you don't talk to us. So the Rebbe's reply was, Ha Tori B'Ho. If that's called a favor from the Medrash, so how can I speak to you?
Oh, you like that?
Dat is een favor van de Medrash. Ze gaan niet. Het is only a favor van de Medrash. So I'm just saying that I was just bringing this up with the Tzad HaShava, that the Rebbe, in certain ways, we saw the Anhoga as a rechen sich nicht mit keinem. If this is what has to be done, get me weiter. Some people have complaints. Let them have complaints. Let them have complaints. And at the same time, the Anhoga was Anhoga of Pashtus.
The Rebbe answered somebody complained to my father. When he wrote to my invitation to my bar mitzvah, he wrote, we invite you to come, and you should bench the bar mitzvah bracha to speak Gevotzim for the Zamosh.
It's a michtav. It's an igris, a barichas.
Yeah. So that guy from who is the head of Eida Chedis? Who is the head today?
Weiss?
No,
Not back then.
You guys, Epstein.
Don't say name.
no, the top one. He was a healer, a renowned healer.
Blind.
So we were going together Shabbos. He attacked my father. How do you write such a thing for what's in a bail? So after I told him, he writes to the Rebbe. How can a person lynch like Gevotzim from a human being? The answer in the whole letter. Charles a Mensch, Nimsa. Those eine Chosik, mein Mann. Is a fairly the block after a man. But particularly a home years, I would have a big house. The tail the block after a man. Occasion near that. Then I saw him, and that was there. I used to see the cars, that was not to see the cars. Yeah, but that's
Yeah. Chaim. I didn't know it was going to be so difficult. Permission to speak? Yeah. So, it's brought down in Likutei Diburim that in his kashrus of Chassidim to a Rebbe, there's three ways. B'machshava, b'dibur, b'maisa. B'maisa is you tell a story. You tell a story in the kusha l'keich ha'maisa. If you say over teirasai, you're makusha with the keich ha'dibur. If you sing a nigun, you're makusha with the keich ha'machshava.
Maisa is Maisa. Maisa.
Maisa is Maisa.
It's not Maisa.
I'm saying what it says in the Diburim.
Okay.
Just Avada. Maisa Hoeke. So we sang a nigun before. We tell over a story. So I'm just going to say over the covered bais iyar. Say over a nakuda of a maima. Just a nakuda. We won't take too long. Shouldn't hurt. Okay. So there's first of all, every Rebbe has his inyan miyuchad in Chassidus. One of the inyanim miyuchadim of the Rebbe Marash is that the Rebbe Marash was the first one to say a hemshech. The idea that we have hemshechim of Maimorim continuing for weeks or years even, that's one thing continues to the next, this is a chiddush of the Rebbe Marash. In Tafresh Lamed Aleph, the first hemshech is vehechrim. Vehechrim is Achron Shel Pesach from the Haftarah, and it continues on, not such a long hemshech, the first one, and then they became longer, the hemshechim. You have Tafresh Lamed Vav, Ma'im Rabbim, it's a very long hemshech. Then you have the Kocha Lamed Zayin, which the Rebbe calls the Kocha HaGadol, and there's other hemshechim after that. Once the Rebbe Marash started this inyan, so Kamuv and the Rebbe Rashab continued the same thing, and so you have the big hemshechim of the Rebbe Rashab. They have the famous hemshechim, Samach Vav, Ayin Beis, and then by the Frierdiker Rebbe also you have, by the Rebbe you don't have so many hemshechim. If yes, it's like 2 or 3 weeks at the most, 3-4 weeks, but that's not whole years. By the Rebbe it's more each maimah on its own. But so the first one was the Rebbe Marash, and it's interesting that he started the hemshech on Achron Shel Pesach, the Hechrim. But the Rebbe spoke once that the Rabbeim, when it came to Achron Shel Pesach, either they would say a maimah on its own, and sometimes they wouldn't even give out the ksav. It was a special maimah for Achron Shel Pesach, and sometimes Adarabah, they would start a maimah Achron Shel Pesach and continue the hemshech. I suppose it was referring to the Rebbe Marash. He continued the hemshech of Achron Shel Pesach further for the next few weeks or months. In other words, to be mamshich the inyanim of Achron Shel Pesach further through Torah, because everything that's nizgan in the world has to go through Torah. Istaklu baraisa bara alma, anything that's nizgan in the world has to go through the channel of Torah. The Rebbe said this even benegea to the maimah of the chasna, when the Frierdiker Rebbe said before he said the maimah for the chasna l'chadoidi, so he introduced the maimah. He says we're going to say a maimah as a hazmona, as an invitation to the neshamas of the Nesiim. He's going to say a maimah from, he's mentioned all the Rabbeim, from the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, from the Zayda, the Tzemach Tzedek, from the Zayda, the Kala, the Rebbe Marash. He mentioned also the Zayda, the Chasam, which is the Baruch Shalom, although we don't know which part from the maimah was shaykhis to the Baruch Shalom. And then from Tatan, so it means from the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe said, when the Rebbe repeated this in the Sikh, the Rebbe said, and of course he also added on from his own Teirasa delay, something he also added onto the maimah. Why? He didn't have to invite himself. If the maimah is an invitation, why does he have to say something from himself? He has to invite the other neshamas from the previous rabbeim. He's there. He doesn't have to invite himself. So the Rebbe said, nevertheless, he had to add on something of his own, because every gilui has to go through Torah oil. So even his own presence had to go through the channel of saying a maimah. So he added on a piece of that maimah. So benegea to be mamshich, the inyanim of Achon Shel Pesach, it's through the maimah. So it seems that Rebbe was referring to that hemshech of the hecher. But there are other hemshechim, and one of the hemshechim, one of the last ones which the Rebbe mentioned in Toshim Mem Zayin, there was a hemshech called Matzazu, which is also a Pesach maimah. Matzazu Tofresh Mem. It's a small hemshech. Now it's printed properly in the Isis Merubois. And in the middle of that hemshech, there's a maimah from Parshas Tazria Metzora, which begins, Gan no lachaisikala. It's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. It's, as we know, Shir Hashirim is it discusses the relationship between Yidden and the Eibishter in a moshel of a chassan and a kala. And in the pasuk of Gan no, the Eibishter is being mishabeach Yidden, that they, even in Mitzrayim, they were tznuim, and they were careful about the inyanim of tznius, and that's the inyan of Gan Nol. It's like a garden which was closed and locked. The pasuk says Gan Nol achesi kala, Gal Nol mayan chosu. It's a pasuk. So the first, the maimah begins with Gan Nol achesi kala. The Yidden are called a closed garden. So the Rebbe Marash brings down, what's the connection between a closed garden and the Yidden in Mitzrayim, Yidden Bechlal? So the Rebbe Marash says, let's take a look at the Pirush HaTargum. The Targum says that Yidden are compared to a Gan Nol, Gan referring to Gan Eden. Just like Gan Eden is locked, that who can come inside to Gan Eden? Only neshamas of tzaddikim. If somebody's not a tzaddik, he has no entrance, impossible for him to get in. It's the same thing. Yidden are not all, they're closed. They don't allow anything else, only Bailam, the Baal, which is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means, as it translates, Navedus Hashem, that everything that they have, all their koiches and even their tainug, even their pleasure, the pleasure of an neshama is only in the Eibishter, in Elokus. V'im chalei chafatzti, his whole tainug is in Elokus. The Rebbe mentions that this is actually a chiddush on top of what he said earlier in the Hemshech. In the Maimah before this, he also spoke a little bit about the inyan of Gan Nol, but there he spoke about the inyan that the Yidden are Surmira. That's an inyan of Ma'aser B'Poel. This Maimah, the Rebbe Marash adds on that even the tainug, even their pleasure, is really only in Elokus. That's what it means that Yidden are Gan Nol. They're like Gan Eden is closed to anything else, is so too Yidden are closed to anything else. So the Rebbe's Medayik, why on earth does the Rebbe Marash have to pick up the Pirush of the Targum? If you want to compare Yidden to a garden, why compare them to Gan Eden? Gan Eden is a ruchnistic place. It's lachchila mokim of Elokus. We're talking about Avodas Hashem. We're talking about a person in his Avodah down here in this world. If you want to compare Yidden to a Gan, compare them to a regular garden. Just like it's brought down in other Mefarshim, Metzudas David brings down. What does it mean, Gan Nol? Just like a garden is locked, who can go in? Only the owner of the garden. You lock the garden, who can come in? Only the owner. So Yidden are closed only to the owner. Who's the owner? The Eibishter. Why did you have to kriech in Gruchnis into Gan Eden? That's the diak that the Rebbe has. Why did he bring down the Pirush HaTargum? He could have easily brought the simple Pirush that Yidden are compared to a closed garden, a regular garden. So the Rebbe says, in order to understand why he dafka started off the Maimah by bringing the Pirush HaTargum, let's examine the Hemshech of the Maimah. What's the continuation of the Maimah? The Rebbe Marash continues to explain the Pirush of what we say in davening every Shabbos and every Yom Tov, Kadshenu b'mitzveisecha v'sein chalkeinu b'seirosecha. What does that mean? Kadshenu b'mitzveisecha v'sein chalkeinu b'seirosecha. Says the Rebbe Marash, Kadshenu is miloshin kiddushin. The Eibishter is mekadosh us, just like ish is mekadosh and isha. What does it mean, mekadosh isha? Osala akula ama kehekdish. He's makdish her that she becomes osat everyone else. Is his personal wife, and kiddushin is meloshin hazmana, that she's mezuman labayla, only to labayla, to nobody else. That's the inyan of kiddushin. It's the same thing. Katshenu b'mitzvah. When a person does a mitzvah, it's mekadosh the person. He becomes uplifted. Even it does even away with midas rois and tavis rois, b'shas the kiyum hamitzvah. In other words, a mitzvah has an effect on the person. And what's we say chalkeinu b'seirosecha after kiddushin? comes Nisuin, the actual marriage. In the olden days, it used to be in 2 separate times. Kiddushin was this time, and a year later was the Nisuin, was the Knesset Chuppah. So there's Kiddushin and there's Nisuin. So Kachena b'mitzvah is Kiddushin, and we're saying Chalkeinu b'seiresecha, Torah is Amshacha Pnimius, b'seirascha b'seich me'ai, is Chalkeinu b'seiresecha is referring to the Nisuin. That's a Yichud Pnimi, the Hamshacha Pnimius, and not just Stam Hamshacha Pnimius, as we know the Hamshacha of Nisuin is Hamshacha Atzmis, could even create a new child. So it's Hamshacha Atzmis. And that's the pshat. We're saying Chalkeinu b'seiresecha, we're having a chelik min ha'etzem, Hamshacha Atzmis. And Keteris Baal Shem Tov, Kashatefes bechelka min ha'etzem, Atatefes bekulei. You're having a chelik of Atzmis come down in Torah. And also Chalkeinu, it becomes misatzim with the person, it becomes part of a chelik of the person. So those are the 2 levels of Kachenu b'mitzvah secha and Chalkeinu b'seiresecha. The Rebbe says that this Seder of Kachenu b'mitzvah secha and Chalkeinu b'seiresecha is not just something that happens, there's an order to it. Just like it's a moshel of Kiddushin and Nisuin, this is the Seder of Avodas Hashem every year and every day. Where do we see it every single year, every single day? B'shas the Yidden were going out Mitzrayim. What came first, Torah or mitzvahs? First there was Kachenu b'mitzvah secha. In Mitzrayim, they were already given the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, a mitzvah Pashas HaChodesh. On the way, they had the Asara mitzvah Shenitztavu B'Mara. Certain mitzvahs were given on the way, and then eventually they came to Matan Torah and they had V'sein Chalkeinu b'seiresecha. So you see that mitzvahs came first, like Kiddushin, it was Mekadosh us, and then we received the Hamshacha Pnimius on Matan Torah. The same thing says the Rebbe. Every single year we do the same thing. How do we get to Matan Torah this year with the situation we're in now? We have the mitzvahs miyuchodes, special mitzvahs on Pesach, achilas matzah, and all the mitzvahs darabanan as well. And then you come from Kachenu mitzvah secha, we go to mitzvah sfiras ha'omer, which is only now. We have the mitzvah sfiras ha'omer, we don't have it the whole year. Only as a hachana to Matan Torah. And then you get to Chag HaShavuos, which is Matan Torah Seinu, which every year is again another hamshach of Matan Torah. So you have Kachenu mitzvah secha, we're saying Kachenu mitzvah secha in that order. The same thing says the Rebbe in every single day. In Avodas Adam every single day. What's the first thing you do in the day? Of course, you have to learn Torah every day, but what comes first, according to the Seder Shulchan Aruch? First, the certain mitzvahs. You have to say Krishma, you have to put on tefillin, you have to daven, and then after that, the Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMedrash, then you go to Limud HaTorah. The Ikar Limud HaTorah is after davening. So there's also this Kachenu b'mitzvah sechas comes first, and then we say Chalkeinu b'seiresecha. More so, the Rebbe says, even in Torah itself, that's the order. How does the Torah begin? Bereshis bo Elokim, what does Rashi say? Lo yehi tzorach lahaskil haTorah ela ma'chedesh hazeh lachem, u'ma tam posach bebereshis, mishum koach ma'asav higid la'am losses lahem nachlas goyim. The reason we started Bereshis is losses lahem nachlas goyim. What's nachlas goyim? Eretz Yisrael. To take nachlas goyim and make it into a nachla of Eretz Yisrael. And roiv mitzvahs are totally ba'aretz. So it comes out the Bereshis is talking about the inyan of Kachenu b'mitzvah secha, and next, when you get to Pashas Bo, you get to Achayish Hasarachem, the first inyan of Torah and Achonos, until you actually come to Matan Torah and Pashas Yisrael. So again, even in Torah Gufa, this Kachenu b'mitzvah secha comes first, and then comes with saying Chalkeinu b'seiresecha. Now the Rebbe explains further, slightly deeper. What does it mean to be Mekadosh an issue? We know Begashmis, Kiddushin is that you give a ring, or you give a pruta or a shava pruta. What is the inyan of a shava pruta? It says it has to be a shava pruta sheichayla liknes chaya nafsha. She's able to buy some food with this. It's in other words, it's an inyan of chayas. Giving over a pruta or a shava pruta is an inyan of amshachas chayas. So kachenu mitzvah secha means that when a person does a mitzvah, he is being mamshach a chayas elaki from the highest madregas. A mitzvah is from seviv kolam. He's being mamshach a chayas, and that becomes a chayas pnimi. And that's why Kachenu, that's why it changes it, has an effect on a person, because he's being mamshach a chayas elaki. But since it's still makif, be'erach the Torah, so it's only kiddushin. Then comes the Seich Chalkeinu b'seiresecha, which is mamish pnimius, b'seirascha b'seich me'ai, then it's called nisuin. Based on all of this, we can now understand why the Rebbe Marash wrote the Pirush HaTargum at the beginning of the Maimon. Because, what was the question? Why does the Rebbe Marash choose the Pirush of HaTargum to explain the pasuk? The Gan Nol means that Yidden are compared to Gan Eden. Just bring a marshal like the says Mitzvahs David, that Yidden are compared to a garden is locked. You can only come in if you're the boss. So Yidden are closed to anything that's zor, anything that's strange and outside of Elokus. Why didn't he bring a simple pshat? The answer is, we're talking, the Rebbe Marash is being masbeh in this mimer, that how do we become locked? How do we lock ourselves away from all outside influences? Through mitzvah sechel, which is how does mitzvah sechel have an effect on us? Through amshacha of a mitzvah, of an iyar ruchni me'mayla. In other words, it's not like we're locking them out. We're being mamshech a gilui from a mitzvah, and that's automatically pushing away anything that's wrong. So since it's the way, how we're becoming mekudesh to the Eibishter, how we're becoming a ganol through mitzvahs, we're talking about through amshach me'mayla. Therefore, it's massive to bring a mashal of a place where of ruchni, which is Gan Eden, which is amshach of gilui lakus, which doesn't allow for anything else. Just to explain a bit more, I'll give a dugma from a different mimer, which the Rebbe said, which is a famous mimer, the Matzazu mimer from Toshim Mem Tes. Maybe we'll discuss what's special about that afterwards. The Rebbe speaks about, the Torah speaks about the milah of the matzah that they had in Mitzrayim after Chatzos. You know, there's two types of matzah: the matzah before Chatzos and the matzah after Chatzos. The matzah before Chatzos, it says ushmartim as a matzah. They had to do shmura matzah. They had to keep it in a way that it shouldn't become chometz. But the matzah after Chatzos, it doesn't say there was shmira. It says lehispik lahachmitz kiloi chometz. It couldn't become chometz. Why couldn't it become chometz? Because there was a tremendous gilui of nigla le'melech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so it didn't allow for it to become chometz. Chometz referring to in yonim of klippa. So in other words, there's two ways of keeping klippa out. You can either lock him out, or you can shine light, and automatically it doesn't allow for anything to come in. That's why the Rebbe Marash in this mimer also brings on the Pirish of the Targum, meaning that Yidden are a Ganol. How do they lock out foreign influences? How do they become a Ganol? Through mitzvahs, through Kedusha, through adding Kedusha. Not just through Sulmirah, but through adding Kedusha. That's why the Moshe is like Gan Eden, which is a Mokib Ruchni, which is Kulei Kodesh, which doesn't allow for anything else. So I think the Rebbe finishes off a bit more, but Omi Yesem finishes off that the Avodah has to be done, and but I think this is also a shtickle hayro sometimes, maybe always, for us in our Avodas Hashem. That sometimes when we have to deal with inyonim zorim, inyonim of bad influences, so we can take a broomstick and try to sweep away the darkness. You don't have to take a broomstick to sweep away the darkness. You just have to shed light. If you're Meir Oir, is automatically you become, and that's bad in the whole shit to the Rebbe. Why did the Rebbe tell us, go and put a pair of tefillin on someone? What did they say? What did the Mesnagdim say? Hold on a second. You've got to wash Negelwasser first, and you've got to make sure he's not Mashiach Das, as if they're all Machav every single time they put on a pair of tefillin. And you have to make sure this and talk to them, and what's one time going to help? Which the Rebbe had to answer all these questions because, as the Rebbe said back then, when the Rebbe started Mitzvah Tefillin, that the only reason why he's answering all the tainas, and it's a sikh, it's printed, the only reason is because of us, that we shouldn't have a chlishas that so-and-so has a taina, and therefore maybe it's not 100% right. They could affect us. So in order to, it shouldn't affect us, the Rebbe answered all the tainas. But by Emerson, we don't need to have all these tainas and minors. The derech of how we get rid of inyonim zorim is through katshenu b'mitzvah se'acha, through doing mitzvahs, and that shines a light, and it has an effect. And we see b'muchush that sometimes one mitzvah has an effect. I remember in Tovshim Mem Bais, Shnas HaShmeinim. Remember, Shnas HaShmeinim was the first time we had a live satellite in London. It was a historical thing. Usually, stuck in London, you don't get to see anything. You just about get to hear 2:30 in the morning. What? I don't know how much it cost. I just remember that in the middle, I was standing by the door downstairs, and I see Farish Vogel come in, and he stands right next to Bobby Vogel. You remember Bobby Vogel? They called him Bobby Vogel. I don't know his name. Nosson Vogel. He was the Gvir from Stott, and he stands right next to him, and he makes an announcement. He says, "If we want another hour, we need £500. So who's going to do that?" He's standing right next to. So of course he took out his checkbook, £500. Then to get an hour to see the Rebbe live was a whole big deal. You had to call in the post office. them from the city of London and put a big dish on the roof, and it was only for a certain amount of time. It's unbelievable. Now you have it in the palm of your hand. But then it was a whole big deal. So I remember then the Rebbe was talking about mitzvah tefillin. The Rebbe mentioned in the middle that somebody had a taina, that somebody had put on tefillin on an Eina Yehudi. It happens. So therefore, basically, he wants to passel the whole mitzvah tefillin. The Rebbe says, a person who never put on tefillin once has a certain din to him. There's a din of kakafta b'lei monach, which is basically is called pesher begufoi, and he has no chelik in olam haba. And one time you're matzliach to put on tefillin on him, you're taking him min akotza lakotza, from somebody who has no chaya olam to a person to now have a din of somebody who has a schus to have chayim nitzchim, chayim rukni, whatever it is. So because of one time that somebody made a mistake, therefore you're going to take away the opportunity of a yid to come from a ged of kafta de loy monach to a kafta de monach. So Akaponim, I just reminded me this Indian that was in Tafshim Membase, which was 40 years ago. That Boim Shon.
But we cannot eat sein am Kegel against Hitler Shai Shmaya soil. What did they ever say? The town is a poshta. He has also a field.
Oh, hey, yeah.
What happened? What was after that? What is that for? So they went and they bought the tops of the Angoran. That's the Monka. Biggest Monka. They figured they will find something. It was also a cola days. Then, how can you tell Mamish an embassy? And so he tells them, the guys, if you planning to play a game to change the pass or something, so I'm telling you, I personally make sure there'll not be a single child in the world that will his film was also 100%. It was completely possible.
I heard more than that. I heard they wanted to make a chayron.
Yeah.
To prove that look what's being said. So I said it's gegangen. They found that. Anyway, that's what I think is that. But upon him, I'm just getting back to the point that from this Maimah you see that through oil, through Katshen v'mitzvah and Achas Kavakam v'sein Chakenim b'Seder Secho, this is if in Chiyuvi you can be doicha, be no'ol, be a gam no'ol from all influences through Inyanim Chiyuvim. So Enochaname, there's such a thing called Sumira, but what's the Ikka Hadgosh of Teres Chassidus? Is the positive. So this is not just benegir to somebody out there who needs to put on the pair of film. This is also in our own, as the Mittler Rebbe says, somebody who is not misbeinen and doesn't know about Yechudi law is a kakafta dolimonach. It's a different type of kakafta. He doesn't know about Yechudi law. What type of Shema Yisrael is it? So, Kamuvan Yechudi law is a high madrega to understand. But the Fiel Keno, Havaya Chod, we say Havaya Chod, we have to have in mind, not Havaya Chod, and I have other things in mind. Can you do the super from the Benjamin Kletzker that wrote Einoid Mulvade at the end of his accounting of his business? It came, what's the Sach HaKoil? He wrote Einoid Mulvade. So they asked him, you're in the middle of doing business here, and you're supposed to write a number at the end, how much, and you're writing Einoid Mulvade. How do you get from your business into Einoid? So he said, my question's the other way around. How in the middle of davening, when we think of Shema Yisrael, do they get to business? Aber nire b'mochish, and kach shamaiti, although I'm not a businessman, but I've heard from many people that some of the best business deals is right in the middle of Sim Shalom or somewhere else in Shemona Esrei, because the fact is the mind goes away, and the Yetzer Hara tries dafka in the times when a person is supposed to be the biggest kavanah, is he finds ways of disturbing. So we also are lacking in these things.
Is it
But-
true? Is it true in Sim Shalom? Is it true that from business?
No. But nicht der Fan.
Bei ihm ist
You're a businessman.
bei ihm ist wel mal schön.
Now, since all explains why we say Echad and not Yachid.
Yeah.
Because Echad shows how the English the grace of the world. So I always had a question, how does that fit in that? Hashem Echad is the Chudei.
How's it Yichudi law?
Yeah, because the Chayim is saying Dr. Echad, not Yachid. It's not like a small question.
That's an upshot in what it says. What it says. How does
Echad
Echad
means-
showing a higher level of Achdus? How does one show a higher level of Achdus?
Hashem Echad means that the way the English says moving the world. That's the whole meaning of Echad, not Yachid.
Right.
So how does Shemai show Hashem Echad
So-
because of Chudei?
so-
That's not.
So Adarabah, he and his sinners. To say that the Eibush is Yochi, you're talking about him himself, not in relation to the world. So Batson, what you're saying is he's Yochid, and what's with the world? Basically, one has nothing to do with the other. The Chiddush of Echad is that even with the world, he's Echad. The world didn't change his Achdus. He's an Echad with the Mitzvahs of the world. That's why
Inside the world is Yachid.
he's Echad even inside the world. If he's the fact that he's
the whole
Yochid,
world is just English, basically.
Elokus is Alts, yeah. Alts is Elokus is Alts. I don't know, but that's the whole word. Dafke Echad. Or as the expression that the Rebbe brings down in one Sikha from the Ralbag, that it says, Ha'emes, emes is that it's muskim mikolat stadim. In other words, if you have a svara amiti, so if only you understand it and everybody here disagrees with your svara, so lav dafke it's emes. But if you're able to be mechiach your svara to every single person, even to your biggest managid, that shows it's emes. Emes is muskim mikolat stadim. So if you want to say, after the Eibush is Yochid, fine, he's Yochid, but we don't see it over here. Echad means that it's emes even down here, whether we see it or not. We're maskim to Yechudi law. Somebody who's by the Madregi Yechudi law understands it and sees it, and we are maskim to it. The emerson is it says that the neshamas of our deiros are not really shaykhs to Yechudi law. Yechudi law is a very high Madregi, but nevertheless we have to be misbaying Hashem Echad. Why do you have to be misbaying Hashem Echad? The Rebbe Rashab brings it down, right? In Kuntzei Chaim, for example, he brings down that Rav Neshamas are shaykhs to Yechudi Tato. Even that, Rachmim is all helping by them. But with Yechudi Tato, we can understand. There's a Metzias, but we're sort of bottled Bittul Hayesh we can get past with. Bittul with Metzias, this is a big deal. So Rav Neshamas to help Nish by them. But nevertheless, we still have a mitzvah to think about Hashem Echad. There's Yechudi law. Why? Because if you don't have Yechudi law, even in life which is Lamaila from your Seichel, if you don't even try to get up there, then Yechudi Tata will also not work. Al derech the vort from Reb Meir Premishlam. You know the vort from Meir Premishlam? As mir ist verbunden neuben, fahrt mir Stunden. So you have to tie yourself sometimes to something that's higher than your level, in order that at least your level with Tzachon will be able to hold with that level. From that, you can understand, now you can understand why it's important in Chinuch to tell to the children stories of tzaddikim. Sipurim Meifsim. Why should you tell them Sipurim Meifsim? If you tell, there's two types of stories you can tell. You can tell Sipurim of Chassidim, and you can tell Sipurim of Meifsim. Sipurim of Chassidim is, you tell there's a big chassid, and this is how he behaved. And he had this midateva, that midateva, and we can learn from it. Then you got to tell him a story of the Baal Shem Tov, the Reb Marash, the Baal Shem's Khan Hoga. What's that got to do with him? It's not shaykhs to get there. Yeah, there's a famous Polish moshel of what it means to be a rebbe. Somebody wanted to explain what it means to be a rebbe. So he gave a moshel like this. He says, imagine it's a huge mountain, and you're climbing, and after weeks and weeks of climbing, you get to the top. So the guy gets to the top, and all of a sudden he sees a kid running around. He says, how did you get here? It took me weeks to get here. How did you see it? And the kid replies, I didn't get here. I was born up here. This is where I've always lived up here. That's the moshel of a rebbe. But I don't know where the moshel comes from. But that's a moshel. Why? We can create. He was lachatchila over there. That's why a rebbe is lachatchila like that. But I don't know if that's a good moshel, because even if we were kriech, we wouldn't get. It's not something that's attainable. You're either Rebbe or not. You can't reach there. But upon him, that's a moshel. So if we can never reach there, So why tell him a marshal about the Baal Shem Tov that this Meifus about what for what reason? He can't get there. The Chassid can get there, or at least try, copy. The Teretz is Yichudei Law. If you only tell stories about Chassidim, which is very good, then these are things which you can emulate and you can try and get there. But the bittul of Yichudei Law felt. When you tell him a story of a Meifus, of a tzaddik, so basically you're telling him that in this world that you see, it's bottled. Teva doesn't tell you, Teva is not about Baldea over here. And there are some people which can show you that Teva is not about Baldea. Somebody told me that today was the yard site of the Chacham Tzvi. Chacham Tzvi is brought down in Chassidus. Beneged to what? That he brings down that Teva be'etzem is also Nisim Ritzufim. Because the Nisim happened the whole time, therefore we think it's Teva. But Emerson it's all Nisim. So basically we don't see that it's a Nes. Comes a tzaddik as a Meshana Darki Teva, he does something that's impossible. Oh, you see that Teva is not a Manda That's Yichudei Law, Bittul Teva. So that's why you have to have also Sipurim Meifsim. So you've got to remember, you mechanech children, is doch am Melamed. Darf man einmal erzählen am Meise von Chassidim und einmal darf man erzählen wegen Tzadikim, which is the Meilim in Teva. You have to be. And you'll notice in andere Kreisen, Benishbach Chassidische Kreisen, they don't have Sipurim, they don't have Sipurim Meifsim. Huh?
And Chassidim.
Chassidim and Tzadikim. You have to do both. Yichudei Tato and Yichudei Law. Okay. L'chaim.
Chaim.
Is Menti watching this? You don't know.
There's quite a few people on. I told him, I sent it to him, so.
Yeah.